His hammer could level mountains. His chariot was pulled by goats, and even the gods trembled when he was angry. But on this particular night, the sky itself was screaming. The storm had come without warning, not the slow, rolling kind that builds on the horizon and gives sailors time to pray. This was immediate, absolute. One moment the Norse sky was clear and cold, stars sharp as broken ice. The next, the thunder split the world in two. Fishermen on the coasts of ancient Scandinavia dropped their nets and ran. Mothers pulled children from doorways. Old men who had survived wars and winters fell to their knees in the mud and whispered one name: Thor. Because when the sky broke open like that, it meant the red beard was riding. It meant something terrible had earned his attention, and whatever that something was, the earth was about to pay the price for it. Before there was Thor, there was chaos. The Norse understood the universe as a war with no final treaty. On one side stood the Aesir, the high gods of Asgard, mighty, proud, seated in halls of gold above the branches of the world tree, Yggdrasil. On the other side lurked the Jotnar, the giants, ancient, enormous, filled with an appetite for destruction that predated creation itself. Between these two forces, the 9 worlds hung in uneasy balance, and into that balance, Odin the All-Father, one-eyed, wise, and always calculating, fathered a son unlike any other. Thor was born of Odin and Jord, the goddess of Earth itself, which meant the thunder god carried 2 natures inside him from the very beginning. The divine fire of Asgard, and the raw, ancient power of the earth beneath your feet. He grew in Asgard among the Aesir, trained in the arts of war, favored by warriors, beloved by common people. Farmers, fishermen, the men and women who worked with their hands and depended on weather and harvest and the mercy of sky. They told his stories around fires when frost came. They carved his likeness into wood and bone. They wore small hammers at their throats as protection, because in the Norse world, protection was not a luxury, it was survival, and Thor was their protector. Now close your eyes and see him. Not the polished, clean-shaven figure of later artistic imagination. The real Thor, as the Skalds described him, was enormous, towering above most men by a full head or more, broad as a longship across the shoulders, with arms that looked like they had been carved from ancient oak. His hair was red as embers. His beard was the same, thick and wild, always damp with the mist of storms. His eyes were a blue so deep and electric they looked like lightning caught behind glass. When he moved, the ground noticed. His armor was iron dark and dented from 1,000 battles. At his hands, he wore the iron gloves called Jarngripr. Without them, no creature in the 9 worlds could grip what he carried. Around his waist, the belt of strength called Mjolnir, which doubled the already impossible force of his body when buckled. And then there was Mjolnir. Forged by the dwarven brothers Sindri and Brokkr in the fires beneath Nidavellir, Mjolnir was not a large hammer by any measure. In fact, its handle was short, a flaw caused by Loki's mischief during its crafting. But that shortness mattered nothing when it struck. The sound was like the world cracking open. It could flatten mountains. It could kill a giant that had stood since before memory. And it always returned to the hand that threw it. His goats, Tanngrisnir and Tanngnjostr, teeth grinder and teeth bearer, pulled his chariot through the storm clouds, their hooves striking thunder across the sky. His weakness, if you could call it that, was his temper. Mjolnir in the hands of rage is not a weapon, it is an event. Of all the stories told about the Thunderer, None burns brighter in the old records than his voyage to the hall of the giant Utgard Loki. Thor, with Loki at his side, and two young humans, Thialfi and Roskva, in his company, crossed into Jotunheim, the land of the frost giants, seeking to test his strength against the greatest of them. They were received with unsettling hospitality at Utgard, a fortress so massive that Thor had to tilt his head back to see the top of its gates. Inside, the giant king regarded Thor with the kind of look a grown man gives a child who claims to be strong. "We do not let guests stay without proving themselves," Utgard Loki said, his voice rolling like distant avalanche. "Choose your challenge." Thor chose 3. He would drink from a horn until it was dry. He would lift a certain grey cat from the floor, and he would wrestle any challenger the giants chose to put before him. He drank until his lungs burned and his arms shook. The horn barely emptied. He gripped the cat with both hands and heaved with every fiber of his being. One paw lifted from the floor, only one. And in the wrestling match, his opponent, an old woman called Ellie, brought him slowly, impossibly, to one knee. Thor stood in that hall, chest heaving, cheeks red, fury and shame fighting for dominance in his expression. He had failed. The god of thunder had failed. The giants laughed, low and slow, like rolling stone. Then the morning came. Utgard Loki led them outside the gates and stood in the pale light of Jotunheim's cold sky. And then, with something almost like respect in his enormous eyes, he told Thor the truth. The horn had been connected to the ocean itself. Thor had drunk it down so far that the tides of the world had visibly dropped. The Skalds would later say that this is where the phenomenon of tides first came from a single night of Thor drinking. The grey cat was not a cat at all. It was Jormungandr, the World Serpent, the great snake that encircles the earth, the creature that even Odin feared naming aloud. Thor had lifted it, had actually raised its coil from the earth, nearly breaking the ring of creation itself. And Ellie, the old woman who had put Thor to one knee, she was Ellie. Old age. No one defeats old age. Not gods, not giants, no one. Thor heard this and stood very still. The anger came, yes, it always came, but beneath it was something rarer. Understanding. He raised Mjolnir. Utgard Loki vanished. The fortress behind them dissolved like fog in sunlight, leaving nothing but empty tundra and the sound of wind. Gone, as if it had never existed. Thor stood alone with his companions on the frozen plain of Jotunheim, hammer in hand, chest heaving. He had been deceived by illusion, had battled things no god was meant to battle, not monsters, but truth. And he had not broken. That was the moment, not any great slaying, not any legendary war, that the Skalds remembered most clearly. The god of thunder standing in the cold, having been humbled by the ocean, by the serpent, by old age, and choosing not to shatter. Choosing instead to rise. The gods of Asgard heard what had happened. Odin said nothing, which meant he had known all along. Loki laughed, as Loki always did, but there was something behind the laughter that day that sounded almost like awe. In the mortal world, the story spread. Through the fjords, across the frozen coasts, into the longhouses and the mead halls. People heard that Thor had fought the ocean, had lifted the World Serpent, had wrestled time itself to a near standstill. And they loved him more for having nearly lost, not because they wanted their protector weakened, but because they recognized something honest in the telling. Thor was not perfect. He was strong, and he was loyal, and he was furious, and he was real. He was the kind of god who showed up in the storm, who sweat and bled and failed and returned. Farmers carved his symbol deeper into their doorways. Sailors whispered his name before they launched. Mothers named their sons after him: Thor, Thorstein, Thorvald, names that still echo in Scandinavian countries to this day. A pause before the tale closes. If this story has held you this deep into the dark, you are one of the rare few who still listens the way the old world demands. This channel carries a new myth to life every single day. Subscribe and let the next one find you before the thunder does. The myth of Thor did not end with the Viking Age. It survived the coming of Christianity to the Norse lands, carried in oral tradition like embers through a winter storm. When scholars began collecting the Eddas in medieval Iceland, the prose Edda of Snorri Sturluson, the older poetic Edda, they preserved Thor's stories with unexpected reverence. The church that sought to erase them ended up ensuring they were written down, and in writing, made eternal. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday days of the week in the English language are named for Norse gods. Thursday is Thor's day, Thor's day. Every time someone schedules a meeting, signs a document, sends a message on a Thursday, they are, without knowing it, keeping an ancient name alive. In the 20th century, Marvel Comics reimagined Thor for a new world, and then cinema gave him a face known by billions. But the core never changed. Strong, loyal, imperfect, capable of humility, a protector of the ordinary people against forces too large for ordinary people to fight alone. We keep telling Thor's story because we keep needing it. Because the storms still come without warning. Because old age still comes for everyone. Because somewhere in the human heart, the idea of a being who stands between us and the chaos, who answers the thunder with thunder of his own, is not mythology. It is the deepest kind of hope. Somewhere above you, on a night like this one, there is thunder. And if you listen, truly listen, beneath the roll of it, there is something that sounds almost like chariot wheels. A new myth rises on this channel every single day. Subscribe now, and the next one will be waiting for you when the storm breaks.